Hi. I hope you guys can hear me. My phone is off most of the day. Let me see if I can turn it up. Okay. Hi. I hope I can see the comments whenever I get on Facebook Live. Hi, Jada. Whenever I get on Facebook Live, my lips are dry. Whenever I get on Facebook Live, I can't ever see the comments, but I see Jada, so it's all good. Hi, everybody. Come on in really quick. I'm not going to stay on long because it's 9 o'clock here, and I'm already sleepy. Hi, Daniel. Okay, so this week is National Infertility Awareness Week. This same week every year is a time to, I don't know what's happening with my lips, is a time to just become more aware of infertility and how to, thank you, Jada, and how it impacts so many couples and women across the United States. We are 1 in 8, my husband and I, we are one of the couples that have been impacted about infertility. I've shared a lot over the past several years of our journey, but I wanted to talk tonight just about some of the things that you really don't hear about that often, and I share it a little bit today about the cost of infertility, but I don't just want to talk about the financial costs that come along with it, because there are so many more costs that come along with the journey to motherhood or the journey to parenthood that don't really get talked about that often. And then share a little bit more about our journey that you may or may not know. So again, the costs of infertility are astronomical, financially, emotionally, mentally, relationally, and spiritually. There is such a price to pay when you're dealing with the inability to conceive naturally. And I think sometimes we overlook it, because I know when I was younger, I used to just see people like popping out babies. You know, they would get pregnant and, hey, Jerry, your call was awesome too, by the way. I hope you post the recording. But I would see people just getting pregnant and having babies and really didn't think that there was any method to the madness, so to speak. And until you go through the journey to motherhood, you really don't realize that conceiving a child, carrying them to full term, and having a healthy baby are really miraculous things in God's eyes. Like I said, a lot of times we talk about unplanned pregnancies and things like that. So we don't think about there really is only a few days. There's a very small window each month for you to get pregnant. And this lip is bothering me. For you to get pregnant. And so then when you start talking about the fact that you can't conceive, there may be a whole amount of time that passes by before you even realize that you're having issues. So when we talk about the cost tonight, I want to start with financial, because I think that a lot of people, if you're not, this is not a journey that you've been on before, that you may be ignorant, not in a negative, ignorant way, but just not have the information that it comes to. Because I think in America, we assume that everyone has health insurance, right? And they do not. That's number one. Everyone in America does not have access to affordable health care. I won't get on a political spiel, but everyone in America does not. But even if you do have access to affordable health care in the United States, hi, Chris, the reality is once you are diagnosed with infertility, your insurance is probably not going to pay for anything. So there are several things that you have to even go through before you even get a diagnosis to determine what you may or may not be willing or able to do. Hey, Delonda. So you go through test after test after test after test after test after you have been told that you have to be trying for at least 6 months to a year, depending on your age, before a doctor will even attempt to see if you are having issues. And in the African American community, this is huge, because we really don't go to the doctor for anything. And African American women are in the largest population of women that have reproductive issues that we think are normal, like heavy periods, severe abdominal cramps, because we're just sucking it up and we are superheroes, right? And we just keep moving forward. Those are actually signs that you do need to go to the doctor. Those things are not normal if you have a really long cycles, if you have more than one cycle in a month, Don't just suck it up. You need to make sure that you're getting checked out to ensure everything is working the way that it should be working. I have so many women that have said, they waited years and years and years and they just thought everything was fine. And then later on, it was really difficult to treat infertility. So yeah, Jada is even talking about the fact that there's a misconception that African American women can just pop out babies, right? That comes all the way back from back in the day. So if you have that misconstrued mentality of what your body is really meant to do and what it's created to do, you will overlook some issues as well. And that also goes into that emotional cost that we'll talk about. But I want to stick with financial for a minute. So let's say you are diagnosed with infertility, right? Procedures to even address it, and this is if you make that decision, and that decision is not for everyone, not at all, but we're going to talk tonight about those it might be for us, just to make you aware. So if you have a procedure to treat infertility, and there are so many different kinds of procedures that you can go through. You can go through in vitro fertilization, which is what our family elected to do. You can go through IUI, which is intrauterine something. There are all kinds of things. There are different surgeries that you can that are available to you, but the costs really range anywhere from, this is just procedure only. I'm not talking about medicine, doctor's visits, or anything. This is after you've been diagnosed and you made a decision about what's going to be best for your family. Those can run anywhere from $5,000 up to $50,000. Hey, Londi, depending on what you decide to do. That's procedure only. Then if you need to take medicine, which most of the time you do, that can range anywhere from $1,000 to $20,000 and even upwards of that, depending again on your procedure and how many cycles that you have to go through. Then you have your doctor's visits. So if you are diagnosed with infertility, every doctor that you see is a specialist, right? There is no primary care physician for infertility. So everyone is a specialist. So those, hey Khadijah, those doctor's visits are anywhere from $175 to $500 per visit, depending on the practice. So you may be adding up that total in your mind. So people can pay upwards of $70 to $75,000 just to get treated for infertility, right? So nothing you may not conceive, you may not become fertile because of that, because this is why it's important, and we'll talk about this in the spiritual aspect. People assume that if you get treated for infertility, you're removing God from the equation. Not possible at all. God is the creator of all things. But when you think about this financial impact, how discouraging could that be for someone, right? How discouraging that could be for someone who goes through all of this stuff, potentially spends this money, and still doesn't wind up pregnant. But then on the other side of that, people who know there is absolutely no way that they could ever afford to do this. You have people that are traveling to other countries just to receive treatment for infertility because of how the United States and our healthcare system views infertility treatment. So then you throw in the fact that maybe you're going to go to a doctor in a country where you don't speak their language. You don't know what you're signing. There are no malpractice laws and tort claims that you could do. All of this is considered just in the financial aspect. So let's talk a little bit about the emotional and mental part, because money is already this huge issue. Because again, in America, most individual plans and most group health plans do not cover infertility. And I'm not going to get a soapbox tonight, but the reality is a lot of elective cosmetic surgery procedures, a lot of our homegirls are getting their butts done, their hips, their lips, their boobs, their tummies, and all kinds of things. Those are a lot of times covered by health insurance, but trying to become a mother or a father are not. Those things are not covered. So now let's take into the fact that you already are emotionally drained because you've taken your body through all of these things to find out what's going on. Your body that God made in his image, that God made in his sight, is not doing what the Bible says it's supposed to do, right? To be fruitful and to multiply, for whatever the reason may be. And so many women have so many different stories. If you, I hope I said that Jerry posts her recording from tonight, because nobody's infertility story is the same, right? No one is going through the exact same thing and having the exact same issues. Again, when I tell my story a little bit later, I can share with you exactly what ours were, but nobody is in that office because of the exact same thing, no matter what. And the reality is when you get there, you almost never leave finding out you have one issue, right? The doctor starts telling you, well, this could be the case. This could be the case. I need to treat this. I need to treat that. Exactly. Exactly. All of these things you find out are now weighing on you. And as a woman, I can only speak from my perspective. Eventually, hopefully, my husband will share from his perspective. As a woman, you hear all these things that make you feel like you're less than a woman, right? That you can't do what you should seemingly be able to do very easily. It attacks your identity. It attacks your faith. It attacks your relationships, because when you have someone tell you, you can't do what other people seem to have an easy time doing, and again, seem to, because 1 in 8 people are affected by this, they seem to be doing something so easily, it ostracizes you. Even if no one is making you feel bad or saying anything or doing anything to make you feel bad, you do that to yourself. Because you're sitting in this office surrounded by other women that are there for the exact same reason. And you realize we're not like every other woman. We're not like, we're not built to do everything that everybody else is meant to do for whatever reason. Some of you generationally, there are other women in my family that have struggled with infertility that I didn't find out about until way later. I was like, y'all could have told a girl that, so I would have known. There are other people that it's the first time that that's happened in their family. And again, we don't talk about it a lot because it's hush hush, right? When people don't have children, we ask them questions like, what are you waiting for? Do you not want to have kids? Oh, you're out here building your career and traveling the world and you're not having kids. We don't assume that there could be some issues behind the scenes. So you have all these questions that come, and I'm 36. And so we're just now about to have our first child. So we've been married for almost 11 years. And my husband had a child before we got married. So think about, all of the things that people had to say and ask. And I have been pregnant before. And those pregnancies did not end in birth. Again, I'll tell that story shortly. But the things that people ask you that are simple questions, that they are not... they're not trying to be mean, they're well-intentioned, but at the same time, that doesn't change the fact of how they make you feel worthless, less than, and without hope. Mentally, there is this battle that you go through, right? Like you're waiting because you want to. No, everybody ain't waiting because they want to. Some are, but everybody's not. Mentally, you go through this thing in your head, and if you're a person of faith, if you have a relationship with God, if you have accepted Christ as your Savior, you wrestle with this thing. So I'm going to kind of put mental and spiritual together as well. You wrestle with the reality of what your diagnosis is, and at the same time, what your faith in God tells you. Right? So we know that faith is the substance of things unseen, and all you see is your diagnosis. All you see is whatever your condition is. All you see is this huge medical bill that's staring you in your face. Like I said, even sometimes people they want to finance fertility treatment, and sometimes you cannot. The banks are not, jumping off the roof to help you finance fertility treatments, because children are expensive. So they already know that you're going to be incurring additional expenses once you do get pregnant. So think about trying to reconcile this in your mind every single day. And if you do start taking any kind of fertility treatments or anything like that, you have these additional hormones that are impacting the way you think, feel, and see things on a daily basis. I read an article about Gabrielle Union, who's an actress who's married to a basketball player. And she talked about over the last several years of her life, she either has been preparing for fertility treatment, infertility treatment, or finishing infertility treatment, and she has never become pregnant. And for someone who has gone through fertility treatments, what it does to your mental capacity and to your body and to your emotions, it is like you are at war with yourself, and you're still wrestling with the fact that your body is not doing what you think that it should be doing. And sometimes you don't understand why. Doctors cannot always pinpoint why you don't respond in certain ways. 8 miscarriages, right? Why your body is not responding in certain ways to certain medicines, or not doing what it's supposed to be doing. So just imagine that mental space, and you're having to function every single day. I run my own business. I lead a ministry about waiting. I'm married. I have friends and I have family, and you have to function every single day. There was a time in our lives that I was totally depressed and didn't even realize I was depressed, because I had been functioning at that level for so long. I was hosting baby showers, trying to make psych myself out that I was not depressed. And it's a game that you play that is very, very dangerous, to try to convince yourself that you are not in a condition. And it's not faith, because I'm not going to call it that. It was being fake. I wasn't being truthful and honest with myself about the cost that was coming in with infertility. So I will tell a little bit about our story. If you know me or have read my blog, you probably heard some of this before, but not probably to this extent, right? So biblically, being barren, oh, don't be sorry, God is faithful. I'm gonna tell, but thank you for being compassionate. Being barren spiritually, if you read the Old Testament, it was like a curse on your family. I even today have seen people ask, if your wife can't get pregnant, should you divorce her, or can you divorce her? And a lot of people said yes. And I am, it is hard. It definitely is hard out here. Reading things like that in 2018 are so disheartening. And when you are constantly in the community of faith, people try to encourage you, but in ways it really makes you not believe what God has to say about you, because you hear people say that your womb is cursed, or your womb is closed, or you're not able to produce, just all kinds of things. So I did not grow up in church. My relationship with God started as an adult. So I didn't know a lot of what God actually had to say about children and about reproduction and all those things. So I really got stuck for years on what God had to say. And I was also told that if you treat infertility issues, that's because you don't believe God. So I was pregnant for the first time in 2008, and that pregnancy ended in an ectopic pregnancy. So for those that don't know what that means, that's a tubal pregnancy where the fertilized egg, the embryo, does not travel down into your uterus. It stops and it grows in your fallopian tube, and that's not a place where a baby can grow. It's too small. So in 2008, that's what happened to us. It was a very traumatic experience, physically, emotionally, and mentally, because I went from feeling just fine one day within hours of that, I had a doctor's appointment and everything went fine, to feeling like I was dying, literally, from the pain. So I went to the emergency room, and in the emergency room, I was told that I had trapped gas. Right? And they sent me home and told me to go see my doctor the next morning. And I went to see my doctor the next morning, and he was very aggressive with me physically and said, oh, I don't know what's happening to you. And so he then sent me to a specialist. So by this point, it's been over 24 hours that I have been in excruciating pain, that I could not even stand up straight. So I went to go see the specialist, and as soon as I walked in, they were like, nobody is giving you anything for pain or nothing, like, what's going on? And as soon as we did the ultrasound, the specialist immediately saw that the tube where the pregnancy was had ruptured. So I was bleeding internally and had been for days at this point. So I was admitted into the hospital, and they had to surgically remove that pregnancy, which was on one side, and disconnect my fallopian tubes from my uterus. I know I'm getting really technical, but I want you guys to understand, again, that everybody's journey is different. So 2 years later, in 2010, I was pregnant again, and the exact same thing happened on the right side. It was an ectopic pregnancy that began to rupture, and it had to be removed. So at the end of that surgery, our doctor let us know that the only way that I could get pregnant was from in vitro. And because I was told that that is not what people do that believe in God, I immediately shut that down. I said, no, I'll never do that. I don't want to find out any information. No, didn't talk to my husband or anything, just made a decision. And we're going to believe God for us to get pregnant, which would have been perfectly fine, except I did not believe God that I was going to get pregnant. I had already reconciled in my mind that we just were not going to have more children. My husband already had a child, and that was good enough. And I was going to do everything else to replace the fact that I did not have a child that I wanted. So I worked really hard. I finished my degree, got my master's degree, started my own business, helped my husband finish his degree, started a ministry, all of these great things that people told me were, you know, you have that, so you should be okay. You have a wonderful marriage, so you should be okay with the fact that you don't have a baby. Like, you don't need that, because God has given you the heart of a mother, and you have birthed so many other things. So why are you, crying over the fact that you don't have a child? So I felt ungrateful, because I didn't feel satisfied in my heart. I felt like I didn't believe at all, and I'm going to try not to cry, but I'm prepared. I have tissue. I felt like I did not believe God, and that there were things that God would not allow me to get pregnant, because I was ungrateful, because that's what I was taught, that if you believe God, you will just be satisfied with whatever condition you find yourself in. That contentment was somehow medicine for not having the desires of your heart met. But the reality is that all that did was throw me deeper and deeper into a depression, all the while trying to lead other women in a ministry where they learn to wait, right? So I should be able to wait, because I am teaching other women to wait. But what God reminded me of is that I wasn't waiting for him to be who he said he was. I was waiting for myself to be prepared for what God was wanting to do. So fast forward a little bit, and again, when my husband shares his side of this will be very different than my side, because he had already decided that whatever way God would allow us to get pregnant was okay with him. We just had to wait for Shantae to be okay with that. So we, several times we went and saw doctors, and we would get into situations where I just could not handle it emotionally, just hearing them repeat this stuff over and over again of why I could not get pregnant. And we were in Nebraska like 3 years ago maybe. Yeah, almost 3 years ago, like 2.5 years ago. And I'm like, okay, I'm gonna do it. We're gonna go and find out what we need to do to get pregnant. And we go to the doctor, and the guy's like running all these tests. And again, going through testing to find out if you can get pregnant or not is it's like one of the most excruciating things you could ever go through. And not just mentally and emotionally, but physically. Like, some of those testings really hurt you. And at the end, they always come to the same conclusion. You can't get pregnant. It's like, no duh, guy. Knew that. And so when he gave us the information, a part of the test that they ran, they found out that I had a tumor on my pituitary gland. And at this point, you guys, I'm laughing now, but it was really like, are you serious? Like, we waited all this time to believe God that we're gonna, get treated for our infertility, and you come saying I have a tumor. And no, we don't even need to be pursuing fertility treatment. The HSG is the worst. To get this pituitary gland under control, you can't get treated. And you guys, I promise, I felt like God was like punching me in my face, because the tumor that I had was a result of a gland that was producing a hormone, producing a hormone that breastfeeding women produce. I had a tumor, and I could not get pregnant, and the tumor was the result of an overactive hormone that should only be producing what it's producing if you're breastfeeding. So at this point, I'm like, you know what? I'm not supposed to do this. There's no way, because when I go and do it, but the reality is when we approached that doctor, I was doing it because my husband wanted us to do it. Not because I was ready, not because I was prepared, not because I had prayed about it or anything like that. I wanted to entertain my husband and show him, like, I'm just not going to be that chick that's able to give you a child. So deal with it. So in the year of 2016, I went through a bunch of treatments and everything to get the tumor under control, and praise the Lord, it is under control. At this point, God is really faithful, and I'll tell you guys about that another day, because it's not about infertility. But it took us through a season where we had to really trust God for healing, physically, emotionally, and mentally, and for me to remove my expectations from God of what I thought God would do, because I was taught that the only way that God would bless your womb is by miraculously doing it without the help of doctors or medicine or anything like that. And through the process of it was funny, because I learned that through being treated for the tumor, right? Because I didn't say, oh no, don't treat me for the tumor. because God's going to miraculously heal me. And I'm not being facetious or funny, because God has the ability to do anything that he so desires to do. But I needed to learn that God could also use medicine, technology, and science to do whatever he wanted, because there was no hesitation or anything when I was diagnosed with a tumor to take the medicine. Like, I had no questions. I had no reservations. I didn't think, oh, is this God at any point? Like, I knew that it was, that the Lord took that opportunity for me to treat something that could have later gotten out of control. So throughout 2016, we ensured that my health was in a good place. We adjusted a lot of the things that we were doing just to make sure that I was healthy. We had some transitions in our lives professionally. My husband got a job in another city. We were able to come back home to Texas, and that was kind of the beginning of opening my eyes to different things, just giving me access to different things that I never had access to before. And finally, last year, just in 2017, we made the decision again to see a doctor. And this was like on our 10th anniversary that we went to go to see a fertility specialist that I was referred to by my OBGYN. And I thought we were going to get information, right? That when you open your heart to God, that he will really give you exceedingly and abundantly more than you could ever ask for. Because I thought, again, we were just going to collect information, which I was definitely open to. But we had a whole consultation when we went, like a treatment plan and everything. And it was a little overwhelming, but it was so peaceful. And I just remember thinking, like, what took me so long to believe that this is how God would bless us with a child? And like, in that moment, I believed that God could do it. Not because we were at a doctor's office, but because I was willing to allow him to do that. So we went through a whole treatment plan, and a part of our treatment plan was to see a therapist. And I just thought in that moment, like, why don't they suggest therapy for women who are diagnosed with infertility? Because that would have been a huge help for me at that time. But I'm grateful for when we were able to do it, and the part that played in our entire treatment process. So for us, because it was pretty easy to diagnose why I was not pregnant, because my tubes were disconnected, it was very easy to determine what our treatment plan would be. So we decided to pursue in vitro fertilization, IVF, and it's not for everybody, right? I'm a firm believer that you have to do what is in the best interest for your family. And for some people, going through the process of being treated for infertility is not even for you. Like, some people find out that they're diagnosed and they pursue other options, whether it's adoption or surrogacy, which are also financially cumbersome as well. Or, some people just decide that they are content in whatever season God has them in, and that's definitely amazing for them. So this is not a video to try to convince you to do what we did, because that was our journey. It's not everybody's, but we did elect to do in vitro fertilization. It's very expensive. I would not necessarily say too expensive, but it's relative, right? Because everybody is not able to afford it. And I can respect that as well. And you have to be realistic about what's doable for your family. And for some people, IVF is not doable for them, and that's their reality. But again, there are other options that are not as expensive as IVF, but infertility treatment as a whole is not cost effective. Like, I'm just be totally honest with you, not as a whole, but you have to determine what's important to you and what's not. So we did do IVF. And for us, we just saw God through the entire process, from our treatment team to our medication training. IVF, I won't get too in detail, really allows you to take control of the process, of the medicine that you take and how you take it and how quickly you want things to go or not go. I know some people have stretched out their IVF cycles over a large course of months. I had some other infertility issues. One of them is called adenomyosis, which is where basically the lining of your uterus pushes into the muscle, and that was a concern for my doctor. So we spread some things out that some people typically don't have to spread out. And then my body didn't respond as quickly to the infertility treatment as other people's do. So you're kind of like stimulated to do what your body should do naturally, and I didn't respond right away to that. So my process was a little bit longer. And then again, I talked about this on my blog, that eventually when we did a retrieval of our eggs, we were able to retrieve 5, and then you have to wait a couple of days to see how those eggs mature. And every day I got a phone call saying another one of my eggs did not make it. And I think probably in this part of the process, this is where I had to believe God, that no matter what the outcome was, that God was still faithful, and his plan for us was to still have children, however that would be. I never at any point felt like IVF was a guarantee, because the only guarantee is God. And I knew that if we did not have God in this process, that we would be exactly where we started, emotionally, mentally, and out a whole lot more money than before. And so on the final day, I received a phone call that my last little egg did make it, and they wanted to give my body some time to wait before we transfer the eggs. And throughout this entire time, you guys, I was battling with my identity, because to hear like, oh, your body's not responding, your body is not doing what we thought it was going to do, oh, this process might need, like, hearing all those things was also opportunities for me to trust God or not. Like, that's really the bottom line. It was opportunities for me to trust what God had to say about me, or to believe what the enemy was saying, because he was speaking very loudly in these times. And I had to wait for 6 weeks before we could go from retrieval to transfer. And that was such a long 6 weeks. During that time, we hosted the Wives in Waiting conference, and I was not sure if I would be able to make it, because even in the time where we were allowing my body to rest, I was having to take hormones just to prepare my body for a transfer. And as a woman, we already have some emotions that get a little out there. And so when you add additional hormones to that, just imagine what that is like. So I'm like, God bless my poor little husband. But even in that time, like just learning to be exactly who I was supposed to be, even though everything was telling me, 6 whole weeks, everything was telling me that you know better. You know that this is a waste of time. You know that you shouldn't be doing this. Like, all of these things. And just learning to trust that if I trusted God to be who he said he was, then I need to also trust myself, because he created me. So in that time, there was a lot of prayer. There was a lot of laughter, because when you're going through infertility treatment, there's a lot of things that you cannot do. You have to be careful of how you treat your body, physically and emotionally. So in that 6 weeks, I got to work out a little bit. I wasn't able to do that before, and just started to kind of feel more like myself. And then transfer day came, and we got ready, and we go to the procedure room, and my doctor, who was not a believer, we prepared to do, but he knew that we were, because we prayed every time we went in there. He said something that I felt was the Lord comforting me in that moment. And he said, I feel good about this. And I've been to a lot of doctor's appointments in my 36 years of life. Not all of them were related to infertility, but I have never had a doctor tell me they feel good about something, because that's not their job to feel good about anything. Their job is to be the doctor. And I had so much peace in my heart in that moment of, you know what, Lord, this was your will for us. However it turns out, whatever you're using this for, I'm good with. And so then you have to wait like an excruciatingly long 9 days after the transfer process before you find out if you are HCG positive or pregnant. And they called me like after hours on the 9th day. It's freezing for you guys. I'm sorry. After hours on the 9th day saying you are HCG positive, but the level is very, very, very low. So we need for you to come to the doctor so we can continue to check your levels. I was accustomed to going to the doctor like every other day throughout the entire process. And this time I was just like, you know what, God, whatever you have, that's totally fine, right? They don't ever feel good about anything. whatever you have, yes, you're totally awake for the transfer. At least I was. I don't think that you would be asleep, because even though you're not like involved in the process, they're doing an ultrasound, and they probably wouldn't want your body to make any like rash or quick movements, because they also have to monitor. It's like this long tube. It's super skinny, and they have to make sure that it's going in the right place. And even though they could do it while you were asleep, they want you to be an active participant, and just seeing what's happening. And you can also have, I know for our doctor, I had my mom and my husband in the room as well. But it's like a clean room environment. So now, like I said, if you've been following me, hey Rosalind, if you've been following me, you know that we are 5 months pregnant at this point from that one little egg that made it on our first round and first cycle of in vitro. And I know that my story is not everybody's story, because again, I know several women that have gone through several cycles of in vitro and are still not pregnant. And I know for us, it was a faith builder to even attempt to try to do this at this time. I'm 36, and supposedly I'm at prime age to do in vitro. Doesn't feel like it, but there were women in that office from all different ages and backgrounds and experiences and social classes and all kinds of things that had gone through those emotional roller coasters, those financial difficulties, those mental and spiritual aspects in their own way. And I wanted to share tonight, because this week, I think a lot of time we talk about like, no, not tonight, because since I am 5 months pregnant, I don't like to wear clothes that look right. So I'm not going to show you tonight, but I'll show you another day. But that everyone is at a different place in their journey. And I know we focus a lot on, you know, like the external part that you can see, but this walk is so hidden. Someone earlier said silent killer. Like, you don't know how people are walking around, and you just have to be careful of how you interact with them. Even other women who are on this journey as well, you have to be very cautious. Like, again, for me, I knew exactly why I was not getting pregnant. There are women who have been trying for years to just find out why they can't even conceive. So I wanted to share tonight, because I know people have been asking questions all week, and we had not been specific in our process. And I wanted to also just share from a faith perspective, because I remember feeling like trapped. Like, I believe God, so I'm trapped. And that's not what faith in the Lord is like. It's freeing. It's freedom to believe who God says he is and what he has the ability to do. And I just believe that there are some women who, yeah, my computer is actually off. That's funny. It went off because the battery's dead, but the music is still playing. I just believe that there are women who want to trust God in a different way. And I really hope that this gives you the freedom to do that, because this process, even before finding out we were pregnant, has deepened my relationship with God in ways that thinking about God in the way that I was allowed me to. So I just wanted to share tonight. I know you guys have kind of been asking questions along the way, but if anybody has any questions about IVF, that's what I know the most about, because that was our choice, or any other questions about infertility or whatever, feel free to ask before I go to sleep. Because this is normally the time I lay down. But yeah, any questions or anything, or if you want to send me a message, you can definitely do so. And I appreciate you guys supporting and tuning in. I know some of you are not on this journey, but you are supporting people that are on this journey. And I will even say, outside of my husband and my family, my circle of friends has been, I mean, amazing throughout this entire process. And I appreciate that. And that is a necessity for people that are on a journey like this, is to have a support system that's not judging or pointing fingers, but are there praying for them and supporting them throughout this process, because it can be very lonely and confusing. And don't ask them why they're not at church, because they may be having a time of worship or private worship at their own home. Don't scrutinize every action they take. Don't question every little move they make. If they look like they're gaining weight, don't ask them if they're pregnant. It could be a number of things. So I don't want to spend tonight like talking about what not to say to people, but just, I appreciate, hi Adrian, I appreciate you guys. I know we do, Maria. Valerie, I can't show well, my pants are not even buttoned. You guys are asking to show the bump, but my bump is little, so I'll let y'all see. Let me see if you can you see the bump between the comments? Can you guys see? See, it's little, but it's there. Okay. I think, okay, what way can we be there for women who are infertile? I would say partnering alongside them in whatever way they want to share. For us, I didn't share for a very long time that was even our struggle. I just let people think whatever they wanted to think. And when they would ask questions, I wouldn't answer them a lot of times. Or we would say, we're just not ready. Thank you, Jada. We say we weren't ready. So I would lie, basically. I would lie and not tell them because I wasn't ready to tell people, because I was not ready to believe that I really could not conceive. Educate yourself. Shalonda's exactly right. Again, it's 1 in 8. So count off 8 people. Thank you, guys. Count off 8 people, and at least one of them is struggling with it, and empathize. Empathize with them, but don't be weird. Please don't. Like, don't feel like you have to hide your baby. Don't feel like you have to hide your pregnancy, because you don't. But don't do weird April Fool's jokes like you're pregnant and you're really not. Like, that's weird. But don't do weird things like you can't talk about anything, or they don't want to have fun. If they don't want to get out of the house, don't make them. Just be mindful of where they are on their journey. Because everyone is in a different place. And if they ask you to go to a doctor's appointment with them, just listen. I can say some of my friends were like mini doctors, and they were researching like parts of the process, so they wouldn't have to ask me exactly, what medicine I was taking at this time and what that meant. They rescheduled some girls' trips around my schedule, and I appreciate that. Yeah, 1 in 4 women will experience a miscarriage. 1 in 4 will experience a miscarriage. 1 in 8 are struggling with infertility. How can we season our speech to not sound insensitive when talking about fertility? Don't make assumptions. I would say that. If you have an old school mama like me, she would say, if you assume you're going to make out of you and me, that is a huge thing when it comes to infertility. Is don't assume anything. Don't assume that you know exactly what's happening, because you don't. And some people are honestly truly waiting. They're not struggling with infertility, that they are planning a pregnancy. So don't assume, that that's what someone's struggle is. But listen, and pay attention to what people are saying, and don't diminish how they feel. I know some of our family members, for a while, like, I would get really upset and they would not understand why I was upset, because I would get some of those things like, oh, you guys have it all together. So yeah, exactly, Khadijah. You guys have it all together. So what difference does that make? And not telling them, nothing replaces a desire that you have that only God will fulfill. Like, nothing at all. Nothing. There's no amount of money. There is no husband. There is no other children. There are no friendships. There is no success that replaces a desire that only the Lord will fulfill. But don't give them the churchy answers, right? Because God is beyond churchy, and He helped them. Help your friends to explore what some of their options might be, because everybody's options are different. Anything else? Any other questions? Those are really good questions, Khadijah. Even the fact that you're asking those questions, I think, says a lot, because we just assume that people can deal with it on their own. And I looked like I was dealing with it for years and was not at all. Highly functioning in my dysfunction. Any other questions or comments? I almost made it, you guys, without crying, but I brought my tissue. Okay, so you guys have a good night, and pray for those people that you know are struggling, or that you don't know are struggling. It's important. They need your prayers. Come on, Adrian, and tell the truth. We need your prayers, and they need your prayers. Yeah, you got a good one. It's important. So you guys have a good night. Like I said, I'll tell you guys when my husband's schedule allows him to share, because his side is probably a little different than mine, but I think very necessary. So have a wonderful night. Thanks, you guys, for joining in, and see you later. Bye. Thanks, Londi.